Are we good? No, I think it'll be okay. Um, just for those watching the video, um, myself, and I'm sure my fellow board members, would like to take a moment to remember Robert Nishaka, who passed away on October 23rd. He served as the Vestal Town Board from 1989 to 1991, and then became Vestal Town Supervisor from 1992 to 1999. He was also an active member of the Vestal Volunteer Fire Department for over 55 years. We just want to take this time to to express our condolences to his family, and to say how much we appreciate how much of his time and effort he has devoted to all the residents of Vestal. So again, our condolences to his family. Okay, so with that, we'll move into the budget discussions. So we're going to go over highway and parks today. And so we'll go over the general thing, and then included in that is going to be highway and parks. So overall, our budget numbers were so incredibly high. So we went back to our department heads as we said that we were going to do, and all of our department heads pulled their discretionary expenditures back to 2024 levels. So we made basically it the same as 2024. So they're going to make it work. We checked in with everybody and they all said it's doable and they're going to do it. So that eliminated all the increase with the discretionary funds. Now we have all those inherent increases that of course are not discretionary. And so we're going to go over, the whole game plan today. Highway and parks, the exact line item numbers. Parks pulled back to 2024 numbers, and highway is going back. And the new superintendent of highway is going to sit down, go over each line item. We had a very brief discussion today, and so he's going to look it over, and he has a couple of days to switch the lines around and everything, but it should be workable for him. If there's any issues, obviously, we'll be sitting down once again. And we have meetings scheduled of all of us for tomorrow and for Wednesday as well. So we have a few days still to work with it, but we have to get these general numbers hammered out and get a game plan for the whole budget. And then we can work on those particulars. So so if you look at the general overall, and Nick, did you send everybody the Excel, the Munis, and the overall numbers? Okay, so you should have it in your email. I'm not doing that again because that gets me lost every time. So, so if you look at the general budget, if you look at the Munis or the Excel version, we're about 2.8 million in total numbers from last year in terms of the general budget. So we sat down, we went down. Nick was working all yesterday, and I was going over everything yesterday and today. And Nick and I just sat down and went over all of the budget sections. And we also went over all the revenues because we want to make sure there's no mistakes. Jessica is going to help us tomorrow, that fresh eye with a budget experience, to go over everything again to make sure our numbers are solid. We're not missing anything. We do have the problem that we had to overcome for this year, which was $300,000 in debt payment that was not included last year. That is in this year. So we're triple checking that once again. But highway has a game plan. Some of that money most of that money was from highway. So they're going to be tapping into fund balance to help their budget for this year. And they should be able to make their 2024 numbers. And again, they have a couple of days to go back and forth and make sure that their line items are correct. But so far, we haven't had, everybody else has been okay with it. Now, that does not include the required increases. So that includes a 3% across the board salary increase for union and non-union personnel. So that's a guaranteed for everybody. So the 2.8 includes that number. Also, one thing that still needs to be adjusted is Scott is going to sit down with Nick tomorrow morning, hopefully, Sent them an email. They couldn't schedule it today. So water and sewer is about $1 million of that over last year's. So if we pull back that million, we're asking Scott and Todd, it's really Scott, pulling back his budget to 2024 numbers. And again, if he can't, and so for some reason in anything particular, he's going to sit down with us in the next couple of days. But hopefully he can do that. So that will bring the increase down back from 2.8 to 1.8. So then now we are literally down to only the non-discretionary increases. So that is $800,000 in health insurance increases, $609,673 in the general fund increases, $310,584 in the highway increases, and $63,477 in the light increases. Now, light, of course, is NYSEG, and that's a 7% increase, and that's a mandate. That's nothing that anybody can do with. The general fund and the highway, the only increases are the mandated ones, which are the salaries, much of which is contractual, and the other ones are just the equivalent for the other non-union employees. Retirement, which is mandatory, debt service, and FICA. And that's the 1.8 million included. So we're hoping to scale it back by tomorrow night's meeting to 1.8 approximately. And then if you look at the total overall numbers, so this is the numbers that we're looking at with the tax levy. Now, the consolidated water and sewer district, about 800, 700, and about 800,000, close to 800,000 of theirs is part of the 2% tax levy. The rest is actually not. We know that they are going to be, they have to increase their water and sewer fees, but they're going to do it on the graduated plan. So we're going to discuss, if that's okay with everybody, they're going to do it. They're going to have to do some this year, some next year, and some the following year. And we're going to do a comparative for all the residents to show that the water and sewer is way below what it actually costs them to be able to do what they need to do. They've been eating into their reserves for the last number of years. The resident water bill has not been increased in 14 years. And I think it's 2021 or 2022 since sewer was increased. And their costs for sewer, and sewer is the processing plants. It's Binghamton and Endicott, and he doesn't control most of these costs. And so that's going to have to be adjusted for the public, but there's going to be a public hearing and everything based on it. But most of that revenue I think all of that revenue is not actually included in our revenue. So it's not going to affect our numbers per se. This 800,000 is included in our tax cap. So when they pull back the total, they will be pulling back, hopefully, some of those numbers as well. Again, if not, it's a conversation and we'll field it out in the next couple of days. But I want to say all the department heads have really done a spectacular job. And really, Deborah also has been doing research on getting bulk postage discount rates so we can save thousands of dollars in that. Patrick is looking into sponsorship for some of the town recreation events. And one thing we need to put on the table, I believe, is also to gently maybe reconsider some of the recreation fees, which are $50 to $60 for a week's thing. And in discussions, we talked to Patrick already. Patrick is definitely open to the idea to maybe increase it $10 a thing. Nothing crazy. We don't want to price anybody out, but the overall price increases and everything is just very taxing overall. And we want to ensure that our recreation program is healthy and funding as much as possible going forward. This year, hopefully, we're going to look into the sponsorships. We cannot include that in the budget revenue. And we went with the revenue side of it with a 4% tax increase, which is what almost every, if not every municipality is going with. Because in the past couple of years, they did 10%, but that was the bounce back from COVID. So with the bounce back from COVID, people are going back to the stores. the sales tax increased dramatically because people are shopping again. But everybody's going at a reasonable level, which municipalities are going with a solid 4. I really wouldn't overreach with that. If we upped it from that, these are all considerations. If we upped it to that, it's 100,000 per percentage. But if we fall short, we're be underfunded in our budget unless something else makes up the difference in the meantime. So if we work with those 4% for now, which is what other municipalities do it, we land up with this, which is in front of us on the cover page, which is after all the calculations, after the revenue is calculated, we are at over the cap. We are at 703,000, which is a lot better than I thought we'd be at. Again, it's a huge testament to our department heads who said they will make it work. So all the discretionary stuff, they're really going to make it work this year. And we looked at the numbers to see if that was realistic, and I believe it is. We also had another adjustment we made. There's a contingency fund of about, was it 76 or 79,000? That was a general contingency fund that was in the budget. It has not been utilized in the last few years. I don't know. Can you see offhand? I didn't ask you beforehand, but it's not utilized for the most part. It is a case of emergency fund. We do have a very healthy fund balance. We do have a solid thing. So in case of a real emergency, any major catastrophe, or like a major thing goes wrong, we have fund balance we can dip into very quickly. So we always have that option. And I'm not sure, and I really don't believe that we need to just like have that money hanging around. And so we reduced, and this is a consideration, can be adjusted as well. We reduced that to 25,000. Now that 25,000 is easily accessible. It has not been used in the last couple of years at all. But if we're asking everybody to hold to the 2024 numbers, it's a good contingency in case that we can say, hey, we can give you money to bail you out if something unexpected happens. So the most important thing going forward is that the department heads are not are looking at more what they need rather than a what if scenario. And so we have to make sure that we have money available for them for the in case. So I think the 25,000 is a very prudent thing to do. But I don't think we need the 75, and we always have fund balance if it is something bigger than that. So I think that's a logical way to reduce some of that. So all of that gets us down to the 703. So then if we work with those numbers, there are some other capitals that were on the table. In the IT department, we pulled out 25,000, about $25,000 in, what do you call it? New computers to bring out the old ones. And Dan's going to look into how old the old ones are. They're relatively not that old. We want to make sure that obviously it stays a healthy rotation. The Windows 11 is going to come in. We want to make sure everybody's capable of getting that. But we do have like 5 backup computers. And we did find out today that we have to do the number count because I didn't pull out FD. So we have about 215 computers in the town. We have 185 employees. Now, a lot of them went to FD, and a few are assigned to court, which technically, I guess, some were bought with our cash, even though the courts are usually supposed to be buying it. But whatever. So, so we'll take the court as ours. The FD ones are going to stay with them. We just want to double check that the funding was all paid for with fire district funding. Then there is their physical thing. We take that out, so this number is going to be less than 215. But in going down the list of the different departments, there's a lot assigned to departments. We want to track those down first. Before we buy new computers, let's find all the computers that we have. We do have a working list now. We can put it out to department heads and say, hey, where are all these computers? And we have and some of them may be multi-use. It may be like a department head has one at work and has a laptop to take home. That's fine, but let's track them all down and let's double check the years before we do it. He says the rotation is about 4 years, and then we'll check the viability. And this decision, I mean, and still on the table. We don't have to do that purchase right now. We don't have to say we're going to buy those computers. So we don't have to make that decision that week. If we don't make that 25,000 capital thing, I mean, this is still in consideration. We took it out of the budget, so we can do the budget without it. It can still be on the table for partial or full funding going forward. We can do these capital things at any time of the year. I think it's really good to consider everything side by side, but I think that it's not always a necessity. So that was what we did. We pulled it to the side, but it is still working. But I think that we need to track down all those computers first, see what years they are, see what the rotation schedule is the thing. That, see what the actuality is and see maybe some, not all, and maybe do the targeting. And maybe if some of the older ones are, and maybe we could sell some of the older ones if we can wipe them clean and sell them and fund some of the new ones. There's a lot of things that we could do, but I don't think it needs to be done by the end of the week. So is we okay with just pulling them out, but that's still a consideration and we're still going to look into that. And obviously we want to make sure our IT is up and running. But that's a lot of computers that we need to track down. So, um, and and I know he definitely has ones in reserve. So in a pinch, he does have reserves. And we need to field out and take off the list of all the FD ones and go line, make sure that we have that they have a list of what they're taking with them as well. Um, and so the other thing is Lincoln. So I resent the email to you. Lincoln still wants certain things in his budget. Right now, he does not have it in his budget. We did not have the additional person that he is requesting in his budget. Again, that is a consideration. We have 2 more days to do it. And if we talk about how we can fund, because we have to get, and I do believe it's doable now to get down to a 2% cap. And if we want to fund more than that, then what we see for the 700,000, then we can consider doing that. But I think we need to be careful about what we do. Um, so, um, so that's really, again, those are all the concrete numbers. There's nothing that is not, that is discretionary in the budget right now. Water and sewer numbers needed to be adjusted. So hopefully it's $1 million down from that, but other than that, we were considering some possibilities, and the overall possibilities were, and we were on the phone. Debbie and Nick were on the phone with Doug today. He was fantastic and stepped up. So the health insurance is an $800,000 cost. So the health insurance reserves is the money for health insurance, literally. And so our biggest cost is, and Nick, remind me the exact amount. The Medicare jump is like crazy. It's like 300,000, right? And so going forward after we finish this budget, Doug's going to come in for a meeting. We're going to sit down and we're going to figure out how we need to fund these costs better and rework the costs going forward. However, for now, we need to pay for what we have. So 300,000. So for 2025, we have to fund this. So that 300,000 is the insurance reserves. Now, the insurance reserve is very, very healthy. It's at 3.6 million. 2.6, I'm sorry, 2.6, and we need to have a minimum of 1.5. Now, I wouldn't suggest going down to 1.5 because it is it is self-insured. We have stop loss insurance, we have all kinds of insurance to protect us. But that being said, if we get a spike in smaller claims, we want to make sure that we have plenty of money to ensure all our employees are taken care of. So I think a minimum of 1.5. I don't think we should really approach close to that. Is on the table is 300,000 can be that Medicare costs can definitely be funded from that reserve. That means that the employees wouldn't have to pay it. We don't have to pay it out of the regular budget. So that would come off the 700,000 if you're thinking it just in terms of a tally. Nick had already thrown 150,000 of the reserves on top of it. And then there's a possibility of another 150,000. Now that would bring us down to 2 million, which is still a very solid number in the reserves, way above the minimum, and very solid going forward. we have consulting companies that ran the stats with everything. We went over that previously. And it is a very solidly funded self-insurance. So I think that we're pretty good with that number. We want to call Doug, and Doug is coming in tomorrow for a meeting tomorrow to double check everything to see if he's comfortable with that. Maybe we just keep it at 300,000. He said he was definitely solid with 300,000. That would leave it at 2.3 million. And then see if he's comfortable with it. And maybe we need to make a call out to double check and make, with other companies, because we have a couple of companies that do the consulting on this and do this double check. We don't want to overreach. But it seems like solid. The worst we would go down to is 2 million, and the minimum is 1.5. So if we got 600,000 of it, we actually are very close to the 700,000. So we're 100,000 over. We have, what is the projected at the end of the year for the fund balance again? I can pull it up here. 3 point, for general fund. Okay. So it's over 3 million, and the minimum for the general fund is 1.8. The minimum reserve is 10%, which is 1.8 million. Mhm. And the general good number is 3 million, and we're looking like we're going to be over 3 million. And so we have some square room there. So I think it's definitely doable. I think it's definitely possible. I don't think we have anything extra to work with. I wouldn't go crazy with the fund balances. The health insurance reserve, I think is well within comfort level for the reserve to make sure. And and correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, if God forbid we got into a crisis situation, I mean not because we have a super reserve, but just in case everything falls, and the sky falls and we have a crisis, we can in the general fund, can we bail out the health insurance fund? Okay, so it should be all fine, all good. We are very conservative with the reserves in making sure that they are very well funded, well over the minimum, in both the general and in the health insurance, and I think we're going to pay for our budget. But that is with the incredible work of our department heads that pulled back tremendously. We need to talk to them about what we need to do going forward. I mean, we are doing all these things. Deborah's looking into saving money on the postage. We are looking at the sponsorships for recreation, and we're thinking outside the box in terms of everything. And we're going to brainstorm with our department heads, but we want to make sure that we get through this year and we can, as we start to see these increased revenues, then we can build it into the budget, and that can cushion some of the increases that are coming forward. Um, and then we have contract negotiations with the unions too, and we want to make sure our insurance, our employees are well taken care of for their insurance. We can't kill them with increases in healthcare. Um, but our healthcare numbers are solid except for these market increases. There was one other proposal that Nick thought we have a contingency fund, and he had gone to a controllers meeting this past month, and the controllers, one controller, and again, they're brainstorming just like everybody else is. What can we do? Because they're all fighting these huge double-digit pension increases and Medicare increases and health insurance increases. Um, and they said, so there's a contingency fund for litigation that's like well over $1 million. These are considerations. Can you repurpose some funds that are underutilized? I don't know, but we should ask these questions going forward. Again, I mean, we have to get on a track where we are paying year by year and not touching contingency funds and not touching fund balance. But so far, luckily, we're going to come in spending, knock on wood, spending less than was budgeted for last year. So we're going to have some rollover money that will be included as cushion as well. Um, but um, but again, that budget should be solid. So we have to sit down and talk to our department heads because you can't stick to last year's every year. We need to think about how we move forward, and But I think everybody pulled together. We're going to be buckling down, trouble checking all the solid numbers. But really, honestly, everything discretionary is out the window. We'll double check with Scott's going to come in tomorrow morning. We should have the final numbers for water and sewer tomorrow. And then hopefully we'll be flush with that. Okay, that did not come out right, but we should be the same with them too. If we can manage the same or almost the same with them, at least the same that affects our 2% cap, then hopefully we'll be okay with the cap. And we should do it without anything egregious. Um, but like I said, it's looking better than I thought, but it's really our department heads buckled down and did an amazing job of really working everything again.
And
So
Maria, just for completeness,
mhm.
as I recall, Code is also increasing their fees for violations and stuff. So that'll be
Mhm.
more money coming in than has been in the past.
Yes, and the fees that they're increasing are not astronomical for any resident who's
Right.
planning on doing anything. Fees have not been increased in a very long time, and I know dog dog summonses and fees are being increased as well. So yeah, and next year we're going to see the kick in for that. And I learned a lot about the revenue side of it. So the different sections, the sections that they're doing right now are very all the what we're planning for is very conservative. If we see the numbers increasing, then we can put it in the following year's budget. And as we all know, revenue offsets expenses, and hopefully that will help to calculate that in. Um, and we're going to sit down with Doug again, and we're going to revisit the health insurance. Um, and but every municipality is facing the same thing. Um, and uh, and so moving forward, we're all in the same boat, so we have time to talk.
And did I understand you to say that other municipalities are looking at a 4% increase in their taxes, and then we're kind of trying to be the same?
Well, no, we're going to hit the 2% cap with these numbers. So we're
Okay,
going to
we're
stay
not even
within
going to go to
2%.
4. We're going to stay to the two.
We're staying to the two, but that is with understanding that technically we're going to go over no matter what, because EMS is now under
Yes,
our tax
yes.
cap. But our general taxes, other than EMS, are going to stay below the two. So we're going to keep our town taxes below the two, but the EMS is going to be an added cost for our residents. So we're trying to be as conservative, as protectful as our residents because they're going to get hit with that. They can't do that. For anybody who uses water and sewer, there, again, Scott is being very conservative in the increases that he has to do and making this multi-year plan. Just like NICEX says, okay, 7% this year, 7% next year, 7% the following year. They're going to do a very graduated plan, but they need to be flat. Yeah, again, the term, but they need to come out. They cannot be using their fund balances to be able to do what they need to do. And they're finding that they cannot do the projects that they need to do. Um, so can I just say that in my conversation, I cannot tell you how much I respect how well they manage their money in every department. And they're very cost effective and very conscious of the cost. And whether it be Craig, in his how much money the brining is going to save us, to Scott, um, to, really just juggling everything and figuring and deciding that he can't do certain projects that he really needs to do and managing to put it off because he doesn't have the funds to do it. He doesn't want to kill his fund balance any more than he is already tapping into it now. So we need to put them on a more realistic level, but that's going to be a public hearing. And that's, the public is going to have a say in that too, but they need to plan for that because as we know, they're more or less self-funded. They really are self-funded, but they have to pay for themselves every year, just like every department, the general fund has to pay for itself and and highway has to pay for itself. Everybody needs to pay for itself. And it's just, um, but they need to be on a track where they're not going into deficit every year. And they need to be able to do the projects they can do. But part of that thing is a public awareness that we're going to compare ourselves to Endicott and Johnson City and the other areas because, and I can say I'm one of them. we have gotten a bargain up until now because Endicott and Johnson City residents pay a lot more for their services than we do. So we're going to do the direct comparison to say, we have not been paying full board on the cost. We have to going forward. But again, with the understanding, everybody is hit with inflation, everybody is hit with increased costs. We'll do it as gradually as possible, but we have to get at a point where we can pay our bills, and not having to be used fund balance for any fund. We don't want to go overboard, but we need to at least be squared away, and we'll get there. So with that, we do have to we have to go into executive session because we have to make some particular decisions about salaries for our personnel, and positions and everything that is person sensitive. So that's going to be executive session. But with that, does that seem okay for today? And then we'll come back tomorrow, and then we'll have the water and sewer in the total numbers. We'll have double and triple checked everything once again. And then if we're all good to, by some miracle, if we're all good to go, we may not need the Wednesday meeting and we can do emails instead, but we still have that Wednesday meeting in case, okay? In case we have any last minute glitches, in case of last minute decisions, or if anybody wants to put anything forward. Is everybody okay with that?
Well, so the spreadsheets we have now are going to change again because most of the lines I looked at were not matching the 2024 numbers.
Yeah. So everything is up to 2024. But remember, with every department budget, the discretionary funds are not going to
Sure,
change.
sure.
But the health insurance, the pension, that has all been adjusted, because that is a fixed increase.
Right.
So all of that, has gone up and has been adjusted, and we're going to triple check that as well. So all NICIC increases are 7%.
Yep.
And that's including the lighting district, which is all of that. But the heavy hits are the health insurance, and the salaries across the board. But again, we'll reconsider all those things on how to better fund things going forward. But we have to make sure our people are paid because they have rising costs themselves and they have to pay their bills as well.
So I can look forward to new spreadsheets coming out soon.
So it's
Good,
going to
good.
be, yes. Can you send everybody by the end of the day today? If he doesn't have the updated one, well, we'll take a look at, he just sent you the most updated ones you should have. And then we won't have the other ones until probably sometime tomorrow
Okay,
because we have
that's
to add
good.
the water and sewer.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. And so that what you sent yesterday was the pull back to 2024 numbers?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and we're gonna go over with Donnie to make sure the line items. So the next couple of days is buckling down and make sure the line items and everybody's thing. There may, if somebody missed something along the way, again, we have the $25,000 contingency, but if they have an emergency bailout, but if they need fund transfers during the year, as long as they can come in within their budget, it's fine. But we'll try to catch everything up front if at all possible. And remember, there's one more budget version. So we still have a little more time for the line by line stuff, as long as the general numbers are all squared away for this budget. If they need a little squiggle room or need to go back and revisit and say, oh, I want to like transfer from here to here, we can make those adjustments from the preliminary to the final. It's really the general numbers. We want to make sure we're funding this and then we have enough money. But I think it's better than I thought it was going to be. But that's to the true credit of our department heads who are just buckling down and making it work. So, okay. Okay, so with that, we'll go into executive session and thank you. And for the following topics. Yeah. So I'll give my topics if you want to give something else. So the executive session for personnel, highway, personnel, business office, personnel, supervisors, office, personnel, clerk's office. Thank you. And seconded. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And it's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, if we could turn off the recording. And I have no voice.